Tonight, we're not going to waste any time. The Canadiens are headed into the last home game of the regular season against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and there's still something to prove. It's not just another game. This is about finishing strong. It's about setting a standard, and it's about how a team wants to walk out of its own building. Then, we're going to get into the conversation about TJ Hughes and Michael Hage and what their future is going to look like, and whether Hughes actually is going to sign with the Canadiens. Michigan's season is done. Now the questions get much more real. Should the Habs go after Hughes aggressively? Should the Canadiens bring Hage in now so that they can entice Hughes to come in? Is this the right moment? Or is patience the smarter play? We'll break down the pros, we'll break down the cons, and we'll call it exactly how I see it. Then we check in on 7 other Canadiens prospects and see where they are in terms of their development. Because the pipeline is deep, the excitement is real, and to be excited even more, finally, what we do is we get to chat with you live on the live chat. I'll try to answer some of your questions and try to have a little bit of fun along the way. So it's time. Let's talk some puck live. So let me ask you all a question. Last night, after the Canadiens beat the Tampa Bay Lightning 2-1, and Cole Caufield got his 50th goal of the season, how many of you could honestly say you went to bed right away, content, and whatever? I could tell you personally, given that I have a heart condition, I had to cool myself down a little bit. I had to take it easy a little bit because I haven't seen this in a very long time. I watched Stéphane Richer score his 51 goals. I've spoken to him about it on a couple of occasions, and I never thought in my lifetime anyway, the way this team was going, that I'd ever see a 50-goal scorer again. But lo and behold, here comes little Cole Caufield, proving all the naysayers wrong, including myself. And, of course, thanks to Sean Banks, I also have to remember to mention, because it's really important, that he scored 50 goals without a single empty net goal. That is a hell of an accomplishment for any player in the National Hockey League. So, with that, let's get right into this one. Because this isn't a soft spot in the schedule for the Montreal Canadiens, and it's not one of those nights where the Canadiens can just ride the emotion in the building and expect 2 points to show up just because it's their last game of the season. Because Columbus is coming in with desperation, and desperate teams are extremely dangerous teams. Sure, the Canadiens have momentum. They've got belief. They've got the Bell Center energy behind them. As I mentioned, they got Cole Caufield's 50th out of the way, and now they're sitting in second place in the Atlantic Division, and it's all in their hands right now. But tomorrow night, it's going to be a little bit more about discipline because Columbus comes in, and they don't care what Montreal is going to look like. They care that they still have something to chase. And for the Habs, that's the kind of game that tells you whether this late season surge is just a nice story or it's the start of something a lot more serious. So let's take a look at the game as it is, right? Montreal they've earned this stage. This team has been stacking up wins. They're surviving different styles. They've won games that needed more skill. They've won games that needed more pressure, and they were pressure-packed, like last night's game versus Tampa Bay. That was no walk in the park. They did it with patience, structure, and a late push, and that really matters. Because at this time of year, the games stop being pretty. They become a hell of a lot more tense, layered, and really, really mean. And Columbus is going to bring exactly that problem to the Montreal Canadiens. The Blue Jackets aren't the cleanest team in the Eastern Conference. They're not the deepest team either, but they push. They play hard and they hang around. They generate offense from pressure, from chaos, from second chance opportunities. And when Zach Werenski is driving the game, they get dangerous in a real hurry. So for Montreal, it's not about just protecting home ice and finishing off the season the right way. It's about proving that they can control a game against a team that has urgency, speed, and a real incentive to attack. And that's not to say the Canadiens don't, because after all, the Habs do want home ice in the first round. They want to get the points as well. So the Canadiens should feel confident, but they shouldn't feel comfortable. And that's where we draw the line tomorrow night. And with that, time for us to get into our, let me go back to it. there it is, the bench boss breakdown. And of course, the bench boss breakdown always starts with us talking about the Blue Jackets' top threats. And their number one threat, of course, as always, is Zach Werenski controlling the game from the back end. Everything starts there. When Columbus is alive offensively, normally Werenski is the one attached to that attack. He activates early, he jumps into empty space, drags coverage around with him, turns routine breakouts into a four-man rush before you even have sorted out what's going on. And the biggest problem with a defenseman like that isn't just points, it's the decisions he forces. Now your winger has to hold a little bit longer. Now your center has to collapse a little bit lower. And your defense pair, they're getting pulled wider than what it wants to get pulled, right? They want to be tight. They want to be right there to be able to defend the front of the net. That's where your structure can literally start to crack. Montreal's answer is simple in theory, but a lot harder to execute. F3 has to stay honest, right? And F3 is the guy who's normally at the, say about the top of the hash mark, the top of the circles, right? He can't be passive. He can't be backing off. He has to be honest. Because if the Canadiens let Werenski walk through the neutral zone clean or step into the top of the circles unchecked, they're inviting trouble. So I want to see the Canadiens forcing him into a second option. Make him move a little bit earlier. Make it give up what he was trying to do. Make Columbus beat you with extended possession, not with one defenseman ripping you into little pieces and opening up your posture. If Montreal manages Werenski's entries, they'll cut the head off a lot of what Columbus is able to do. And that, in and of itself, is the most dangerous part of the Blue Jackets game. The second is allowing Adam Fantilli to attack downhill. This is where the game can get uncomfortable really fast. And we saw it the last time we played the Blue Jackets. Fantilli is a problem because he doesn't play small. He doesn't wait around the perimeter. He comes at you. He can beat coverage with pace, and he can attack inside body position without batting an eye. And once he gets momentum, God help you. He forces defenders into penalties, reach-ins, and lost net front battles. And that's the real danger that Fantilli has always presented. You can't defend Fantilli with sticks alone. You have to get close with his body, with your body angle. You have to make first contact early, and you have to kill the play before it gets anywhere near the crease or the goal line. Because if Fantilli starts living under the hash marks, everything gets dirty. Loose pucks, second whacks, broken coverage. Montreal has to gap up on him in the neutral zone and finish their checks below the goal line. No free spins, no clean cutbacks, no casual box outs. Against a player like Fantilli, soft defending turns into panic defending. And panic defending usually ends up with a puck in the back of your net. So for Fantilli, you got to beat him into submission. There's no other way to put it. Don't be too overly aggressive where you're going to take penalties, but let him know you're there. And that'll throw him off his game because he won't be very comfortable. And the third threat, of course, is the fact that Columbus is coming in with a little bit of scoreboard desperation. This is the one that everybody underestimates because they don't think it's tangible, but it is. Sometimes the bigger threat that you face isn't just one player. It's the context in which the game you're playing. Columbus is chasing a playoff spot and life after the last game of the season. They know what the math is. The season is shrinking. And the teams that are in a spot like theirs, including the Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Islanders, they'll empty the tank for 60 minutes to make sure they can get to where they want to be. That means a very hard first period. It means every race matters. It means they'll try to turn this into a frantic road game where one bounce can swing the entire night. And Montreal can't get dragged into an emotional mess like that. The answer for the Habs really is better puck management. Not cute puck management where you're dipsy-doodling and you're moving the puck around. Smart puck management, right? Off the glass when you need it. North when it's available. No blind passes up the middle at either one of the two blue lines because if you gift Columbus transition, you had oxygen to a team that came in begging for life. The Canadiens should make this game feel like it's a long one for the Blue Jackets. Long shifts, heavy exits, hard retrievals, long cycles, you name it. Face-offs in the Columbus end is another thing that the Canadiens should absolutely force them into losing all the time. Make them earn every inch of ice and make their desperation feel more like exhaustion. Now, let's take a look at our matchups for this game. A top matchup always includes Nick Suzuki and his line, right? But this time it won't be top line versus top line. It's the Suzuki line versus Werenski's minutes. Because for me, this is the game inside the game when it comes to this matchup on Saturday. Suzuki's line has more to do than just produce, right? It has to dictate, which they did in multiple games down this last stretch. When Werenski's out there, though, Montreal's best players have to make him defend first. That means puck support down low. It means making him turn, getting pucks in deep behind him, attacking behind him when he activates. Suzuki, as we all know, is at his best when he slows the game down, enough to make defenders make bad decisions. And against Columbus, that patience is going to matter more than anything because they're hungry and they're going to push forward without thought. So if Suzuki's unit can pin Werenski even for a few extended shifts, it could change the entire rhythm of the night. And that's a very important part in the Canadiens trying to win this hockey game. The second matchup for me is Cole Caufield's release against Columbus's slot coverage. Now, as we've all figured out, right, that I mentioned right off the top of the show, Caufield's hit his 50 goals. And the dangerous part is he doesn't even look like he's done at all, right? What makes him lethal right now isn't just his shot. It's how quickly he gets available inside the dots, off coverage, and on the weak side. Columbus can't let this become a loose slot game, and Montreal can absolutely try to make it one. I want to see seam threats. I want low to high rotations to force the defense to expand a little bit. I want quick bump plays off the wall where it forces the Jackets' coverage to collapse and then break. 1/2 second of confusion, and that's all that Cole Caufield needs. And you all know it. That pressure changes how Columbus defends the whole ice. And if you can find just a little bit of space when it comes to Cole Caufield, you know he's going to put that puck back in the net. That goes without saying. And the last thing, of course, is how Montreal's defense is going to handle itself under forecheck stress. Now, this is something that worried me against the Carolina Hurricanes a couple of weeks ago. But it seems like the Canadiens have really taken control of that forecheck pressure because it's where the Canadiens have been and need to stay clean because Columbus is going to chase. They're going to finish hits and they're going to force the rushed rims and ugly reverses. So Montreal's defense has to move pucks decisively. First touch matters. Communication matters. Make sure your switches are good in the defensive zone. Support the low forward as much as you can. That matters as well. Because if the Canadiens exit clean, then the Columbus attack is nothing, and they can attack Columbus's defense while it's in motion. And that's where the Blue Jackets become vulnerable, especially with a guy like Damon Severson out for the season. If Montreal gets stuck in its own end trying to make the perfect play, then that becomes more of a grinding game, which is the game that Columbus wants. But if the Canadiens remain clean and handle the forecheck of the Blue Jackets, it's going to be a little bit lighter a night for the Canadiens. Now, let's take a look at the Canadiens' 3 keys to victory. Number 1, they need to win the middle of the ice. If Montreal owns the inside, they've won this hockey game without even having to worry about it. It means defending inside out and defending the inside first. The offense, inside next. Protect your crease, take away second chances, and attack the blue paint at the other end. No fly-by hockey. Make sure you finish your body checks. No comfort along the perimeter. This game should be ugly in all the right places. Montreal has enough skill. They've shown us they have enough pushback after what they did with Tampa last night. And what they need against the Blue Jackets, it's even more bite because Columbus, unlike Tampa, doesn't really have the roster to be able to handle that type of game and that type of pushback. So it's going to be a huge game for guys like Josh Anderson, Arber, Xhekaj, Joe Veleno, to name a few. Then the second thing they need to do is they need to punish Columbus for overcommitting. You know that the Blue Jackets are going to push. That is expected. And then when they push hard, they tend to stretch their structure. And that's where Montreal has to be ruthless. They have to have quick support through the neutral zone. They have to have fast counters and attack the space behind the pressure. So it's not a night for slow recognition, right? It's a night where you have to have instantaneous reads. When Columbus gets aggressive, the Canadiens have to make them pay for it. Not later, right now, immediately. And that is very, very simple. As I've mentioned more than once, against a strong forecheck, if you go back and you look at my 2-1-2 video, it's easy as pie. It means D to D passes, quick ups to players that are swinging through the zone, and then you come out cleanly behind the pressure that's there. That's what the Canadiens need to do against Columbus. And the last thing, which is going to be tough for Montreal, but should be feasible anyway, they need to treat this like a playoff game right here and now. Yes, they've clinched. Yes, they're guaranteed to be in the top 3 of the division. But they have to treat this like a playoff game. Not next week. They can't wait for it. Not when the bracket shows up right now. The Canadiens should approach this game with playoff detail so that they should do this even with the last remaining 3 games of the season, right? They have to keep short shifts, keep the net front honest, no cheating on offense, no sleeping through the first 10 minutes of a hockey game, because one of the best habits a rising team can build is understanding that meaningful hockey doesn't begin right at the beginning of the postseason. It begins when the pressure does. And if anything has indicated anything lately, we know the pressure is already here. As I mentioned, the Canadiens want to get to the top of the division. They want to get home ice. They're not going to do that by taking a night off against a team that's fighting for their playoff lives. So the pressure is real, and the Canadiens have shown us that they know exactly how to handle it. Now, time for my prediction. I think Montreal wins this game, and yeah, you're all going to say, yeah, Homa. I think they're going to win, but I don't think it's going to be easy. I think Columbus comes at them hard, that Columbus is going to get their looks, and they're going to make things uncomfortable, because that's what desperate teams do. But right now, the Canadiens are more complete. They're getting great goaltending. They're a hell of a lot more composed, and they're more dangerous every time a game tightens up. They've proven that time and time again of late. They've been finding ways. They've been handling the pressure. And the top-end skill is giving them a real finishing edge, especially with Caufield rolling and the team coming off another statement win against Tampa Bay. So I'm calling it Canadiens 4, Blue Jackets 2. A late empty netter, a 10-second period, and a Bell Center crowd that feels exactly how close this thing is getting and how important these 2 points are for the home team. So, with that, for the preview, here's my question. Can the Canadiens control the pace, or will Columbus drag them into a desperation game? Because this is the fight. It's the whole night. I'm taking Montreal. I think their structure holds, and their skill is going to break through. And I think they defend home ice with the right kind of edge, and that's the real test. But drop your predictions into the comments or the live chat right now, and I'll look at it a little bit later. Tell me your swing matchup, and tell me this. Do you trust the Canadiens to play a mature playoff-style game against a team that has everything on the line? That is the answer, the question, and the answer I want to hear from you guys. Now, let's get to some business that needs to be discussed, and that is whether or not TJ Hughes should come to the Montreal Canadiens, and if the Canadiens can afford to be passive. I don't think they can. If the Canadiens are serious, they can't just sit on their hands here. Right? Michigan's season is done. They lost last night to Denver in double overtime, ending their Frozen Four dreams. And the battle to get TJ Hughes begins right now. Hughes is the type of player that smart teams steal while passive teams keep evaluating. And if Montreal lets Toronto, Edmonton, or anybody else walk in and win this recruiting battle, that's not bad luck. That's getting beat. And teams that want to contend don't get beat on opportunities like this. Hughes is a free agent, 24 years old, with a huge upside. And the fact that he is a line mate of Michael Hages, that actually bodes well. And he's a Habs fan. He grew up one. So why wouldn't he come to Montreal? Well, money talks, right? So we'll see what happens. So getting Hughes isn't a luxury. It's a test of how aggressive the Canadiens really are, right? And now another question is whether or not that same aggressiveness applies to whether or not you should bring Michael Hage to Montreal now and you don't screw this up. Because, right now, Michael Hage is the highest ranked player in the Canadian system in terms of prospects, right? And they have a decision to make. Do they bring him up now? And do they finally let the future walk through the door? Or do they slow things down before their excitement turns into a mistake? Because let's be honest, Habs fans are ready. A lot of people look at Michael Hage and they see the next wave. They see skill, they see vision, they see a huge upside, and they're saying, enough waiting. Just bring him to Montreal. But this is where organizations get exposed, and this has happened to Montreal in the past. So pay very close attention, guys. Smart teams don't make prospect decisions based on the fan base's impatience, right? Dumb teams, yeah, they've done it a million times. We used to be one of them. They confuse hype for timing. So tonight, we're ripping all that way open, and we're giving you 5 reasons why Michael Hage should come up right now, and 5 reasons why doing it too early can backfire. Because this one's not just about a prospect. It's about whether the Canadiens know when to push the future forward and when to protect it from themselves. So let's take a look at the pros to start. And pro number 1 is the Canadiens still need a center with more high-end talent in the position. That's the obvious one. The Canadiens absolutely need more talent down the middle. And that's not to say that Oliver Kapanen hasn't done a good job, but you can't compare Kapanen to Hage. Now, Nick Suzuki, that part's settled. He's your number 1 center. He's your leader. No debate. But behind Suzuki, that's a little bit more up in the air. There's still too many questions. There's a lot of uncertainty. Maybe this guy fits in. Maybe this player can handle it more. There's too much projecting. And serious teams don't build contenders on projecting forever. At some point, they need real answers. And that's why Michael Hage matters. Because he's not just another prospect. He's not just another body in the Canadiens pipeline. He's a first-round talent with real offensive upside. A player who can think, create, attack, and potentially become part of the long-term solution at center. And if that's the case, then why drag your feet by default? At some point, you have to stop talking about the upside and start testing it against NHL reality. Can he think fast enough? Can he handle an NHL pace? Can he play in tight ice? And if the answer might be yes, then Montreal has every reason to get him closer to the real thing. And that leads right into the next point. Because with Hage, the attraction is not just the talent, it's how he sees the game. So the second pro is how his hockey brain may let him adjust faster than people think. And this is where some prospects separate themselves, not by raw skill, by processing. The NHL is not just a faster version of the lower levels. It's a thinking test under pressure. The ice disappears fast. Windows close faster. And punishment, we've all seen it arrive way too quick. And young players who can adjust quickly, they're usually the ones who see the game before it happens. A lot like Laine, Hutson, and Ivan Demidov, to give you a couple of examples. And that's why Hage is interesting. He's not just flashy. He's smart. He processes. He anticipates. And he can read pressure really well. And when a player has that, the transition can happen faster than a lot of people expect. Not easy, certainly not perfect, but a hell of a lot faster. And that's why there's a legitimate argument for getting him to Montreal's environment now. Get him into NHL meetings. Have him in NHL practices. Let him learn the NHL pace. Then he'll understand the standard. Because sometimes the next step in development isn't another year where you look good. Sometimes it's exposure to the level that you're eventually going to have to survive. And if Montreal believes Hage's mind is already trending towards pro-ready, then there's a logic to getting him not in closer right now and having him on the team. And beyond the brain, there's another reason fans want this. They're craving another layer of attack. Pro number 3, he could give the offense another jolt of life. This team has taken steps, no question. But let's not pretend that the Canadiens don't have stretches where the offense goes flat. too predictable, a little too safe, very easy to defend. And that's where a player like Xhekaj becomes tempting because he's not just there to fill a jersey. He brings skill, he can transport the puck, attack seams, create off the rush, and he makes plays in traffic. And sometimes a young player doesn't have to be perfect to help. Sometimes he just has to bring life, energy, creativity, and unpredictability. Something that changes the feel of the ice. And when you're a team still trying to climb, that really matters because talent doesn't just improve a lineup on paper. It changes the emotional temperature of a group. It raises competition, curiosity, pace. And even if Xhekaj is not walking in to dominate right now, let's say, right? Might dominate a few years down the road. The possibility that he can inject something dynamic is part of the reason this conversation exists at all right now. Now, here's the point where the fan base starts getting a little bit louder because the next question becomes exactly what's left for him to prove. And that makes pro number 4. There may be less and less left for him to prove in college. And that's the part that people get fired up about. Because at some point, development and delay stop being the same thing. Yes, college hockey has become a very strong path to the NHL. Yes, it can be great for growth. But eventually you reach a point where staying there isn't really telling you anything new. And that's kind of the question I have with Michael Xhekaj. How much more can you actually continue learning from another season in college? Another year of dominating and looking good. Another year of saying, yeah, he's close. Close isn't a plan. Soon isn't a timeline. At some point, the next lessons have to be pro lessons. Heavier defenders, faster reads, less room, less time, more consequences. And if Montreal believes that those lessons are now what he needs, then another year of college comfort starts to make even less sense. Because real development doesn't always happen where you're succeeding, right? Sometimes it happens when your game gets exposed and you learn what you still need to learn. And that environment, without a doubt, is pro hockey. Some of you are going to say maybe the AHL, but to me, I don't think so. I think the here and now is he stays here. And then there's no emotional side of this whole thing, right? The part that the fan base feels in his chest. Pro number 5, getting Xhekaj would make the future feel real right now. And that matters. I don't care if some people call it emotional. It matters. Because Canadiens fans have been sold the future for a long time. The rebuild, the prospect pool, the draft picks, the next wave, the next step. Geez, I'm choking on myself. Fine. We've got all that. But eventually, people want to see something real. Not just hear about it, but feel it. And when a player like Michael Xhekaj arrives, that's what it signals to your fan base. It says the future isn't just a concept anymore or a thought. It says prospects are moving from theory to the actual picture. That matters to fans. It matters to the room. It matters to the players. And it matters to the organization because it creates momentum. It creates belief. And it tells everybody that Montreal is not just collecting young names anymore. It's starting to turn those names into options, pressure, solutions, and actual movement. And right now, for a market desperate to feel the next wave arriving, bringing in Xhekaj would feel like a jolt. To that, there's no question. Okay. That's the exciting side. That's the side that everybody wants to see. That's the hopeful side, and that's the side Canadiens fans love. Now we get to the harder part. Because this is where smart teams have to protect players from hype. This is where you ask, just because you can bring him in now, should you? So let's take a look at the 5 reasons the Canadiens may hesitate. Reason number 1, well, the talent is not the same as NHL readiness. This is where people are a little bit sloppy. When they see talent and then they assume timeline. Because they see upside and they assume readiness. That's lazy thinking. And I'm not trying to insult anybody out there when I'm saying this, okay? It's a truth in the world, in the hockey world. Talent's not readiness. Potential's not readiness. Excitement is definitely not readiness. The NHL is where projections get tested brutally. and a player you get away with in college, well, it can burn you immediately in the National Hockey League. A soft read, a lost battle, a half-second delay. That's the difference between surviving and chasing the game. So Montreal can be cold about this. Not romantic, not emotional, cold. Is Michael Hage ready for the physical demand, the pace, the tactical detail, the unforgiving punishment of NHL hockey right now? Because if you're asking yourself the question and the answer is clearly not yes, then bringing him in isn't so bold. To me, it's a little bit irresponsible. And if he's not ready now, that doesn't mean that something's wrong. It means that he just needs another year to make him look a little bit more dangerous. And that brings up con number 2. Another, you could turn him into promising to serious. Man, I had a hard time saying that one. This is the point hype people hate in terms of why another year? Because another year is not automatically wasted time. It's not invaluable. It can add strength, more muscle, more balance, confidence with pucks, and maturity down the middle. And that matters for anybody that's developing to play in the National Hockey League. Because there's a huge difference between getting to Montreal and getting to Montreal ready to stay. And that ultimately is the goal. Not a cameo, not a flyby, not a story, not a debut people talk about for 2 days, and not the story behind what happened with his family. A real arrival, a real push for a real role. And if another year helps Hage get there stronger, then that year's not passive. It's productive, smart, and disciplined development. Because the Canadiens don't just need Hage to show up. They need him to matter when he does get here. And timing matters even more because of where the Canadiens are right now. This is not a harmless little test environment like it was 2-3 years ago. So con number 3, Montreal is not a soft landing spot anymore. And let's be real. The pressure's real. You can't just toss a kid in and see what happens. The Canadiens are trying to build something absolutely tangible, trying to sharpen details, establish trust, win meaningful games. And that changes your whole perspective because early on in this rebuild, the Canadiens could bring in young guys and they had nothing to lose. And when fans imagine a prospect arriving, they imagine the buzz, the jersey, the excitement, the hope. You know what coaches imagine? Missed coverages, poor puck decisions, lost assignments, moments that cost games. And that is the big difference that we don't talk about often enough when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens. Fans always live in the upside. Coaches, they live in trust. And if Marty St. Louis is trying to lock in on a group, he's not interested in romance. He's interested in reliability. Can this player help us right now? Can he hold up? Can he be trusted? Can he win faceoffs on a regular basis? Because if the answer is not clear, then meaningful hockey is a bad place to run a feel-good experiment. And even if you like the player, there's another layer. The city, the noise, the pressure. Con number 4 is the Montreal spotlight might hit him immediately and may hurt him because this market is intense. That's the part of what makes it great. It's also the part that makes it dangerous when it comes to developing young players. The second Michael Hage signs, the noise begins. Every ship gets analyzed. Every touch gets overly discussed. Every mistake gets clipped and shown around the world. And flashes get turned into prophecy. And that can become a lot for a young player really quickly. Development always needs breathing room. It needs patience. It needs rooms to struggle a little bit without having the whole market acting like it's a verdict. Montreal does not always offer that. It offers a spotlight and a big one. And the question the Canadiens have to this answer is simple. Do they want Hage learning under pressure right now? Or do you want him arriving late, a little stronger, a little older, and a lot more prepared to handle the madness? Because once he signs, those expectations are coming. And all of that leads to the biggest fear of all. Not that he would fail forever, but one that would distort the development. And con number 5 is rushing him could hurt the player you actually want. And that's the biggest risk. This is the one smart organizations obsess over, because when you rush a prospect, sometimes, like Guillaume Latendresse, it destroys him. And that's not what you don't want. You do something sneakier and you change him. He stops playing free, stops attacking naturally. He starts playing careful, scared, looking over his shoulder. He starts trying not to make mistakes instead of trying to drive the game. And that's how you end up with a high-end player that starts looking smaller than he really is. Not because the talent vanished. The talent will always be there. But because the timeline got pushed way too hard. That's the mistake a lot of teams make with young talent. And that's a mistake that we as Canadiens fans have seen all too often. That you chip away at the thing that made him exciting in the first place. And Montreal can't afford that. Not with a prospect this important. Not with a player who can become a real piece of this build. So no, you don't want to make the move because people are restless. You make the move because you believe the experience will build him, not just announce him. So here's where I land. I get the temptation. I really do. Because Michael Hage feels close, especially after the World Juniors. He feels like one of those prospects who really already can picture in a Canadian sweater. You already see the highlights and you can imagine the buzz. And that's exactly why this decision is dangerous, because the emotional in the case is screaming, bring him in, give the fans a taste, push the future, let's go. I get it. And I'm right there with you. But this is where Kent Hughes and the front office have to be the adults in the room, right? Not cheerleaders, not trendy followers, not podcasters, real adults. Because good organizations don't move players based on public impatience. They move players based on what is best for their players and what's best for the organization. And that's the real test. Not whether fans are excited. Of course they're excited. Fans are excited about the shiny new thing every time it arrives in Montreal. That's not management. Management is about being disciplined. It's about timing. It's about knowing the difference between a player being close and a player that's ready. And if the Canadiens believe Michael Hage is ready for his next step in development, and it should happen at the pro environment, then fine, do it. Sign him. Bring him in. Let's turn the page. But if you believe for a single second that one more year at Michigan can make him stronger, sharper, more explosive, more competitive, more complete, and more likely to arrive in Montreal ready to stay, then don't flinch. Wait. Because waiting is not weakness when it protects your asset. What would be weak is moving this asset because the market wants a new toy. What would be weak is turning a development decision into a hype decision. And the Canadiens can't afford that. Not now, not ever, not where this rebuild is, and not with how important the next wave is. So that is the fight. Do you bring Hage in soon, or do you bring him in ready when it matters and when he's prepared? Because those are not always the same thing, and the Canadiens better know the difference. What you're doing with Michael Hage, are you signing him now? Are you signing him back or sending him back to Michigan for one more year? So here's the big question, and I know this one's going to be a point of contention everywhere. Are Canadiens fans asking for the future because it's ready or because they're tired of waiting? Again, drop it in the comments. And I'm telling you, this isn't about anything else other than the fan base pushing hard. But honestly, in my own coaching opinion, I like Michael Hage. I like his game. I like the way it looks. Honestly, the only downside to him coming up is the fact that I don't know whether or not he's ready or prepared to actually get into, what were we talking about? Get into the lineup. Now, as my notes disappear off my screen, I got to bring up the other prospects. So give me a second as I get this ready. Got to love this when this happens during a live show. People warn me about doing live shows with stuff that doesn't work. Go figure. Hang on. I'll be here in a second. I prepared it. It was ready. But you know how it is, right? You rush. It's Good Friday for all the Orthodox Christians out there. enjoy your Easter. I know I'm going to enjoy mine. Got to go to communion tomorrow because otherwise I can't eat anything until I do. And I'm starving. I will tell you that. Now, let me get to my prospects. Where is my... Come on. This was long and arduous to do. Come on. Oh, what do you know? I actually deleted it. I'm so stupid. Hang on, because I backed it up. Give me a sec. This is horrible. What great radio this makes, right, guys? You're watching me on a screen. Gotta love it, right? Okay, where are we? Prospect evaluation. Woohoo! Here we go. Okay. That wasn't it either. Oh, Jesus. Come on. Where did I put it? Good Lord. I deleted it. What do you know? I can't believe I did that. Oh my God. Such an idiot. I got to apologize. I can't believe I did that. Oh, maybe not. Hang on. I found it. There we go. All right. Where are we? Okay. Let's start in terms of our prospects. Let's start with Alexander Zborowski. Okay. He brings flash, he brings skill, he brings curiosity, and he's perfect after Xhekaj because it raises the excitement level. That's not even what I was looking at. Where's my script? There it is. There we go. Alexander Zborowski is the type of prospect that makes you lean forward because there's a lot of skill there, right? We've seen that through all the highlights this season. It's not decorative skill. It's a lot like the skill that Ivan Demidov brought to the table, right? Not soft perimeter skill. It's the type of skill that could change a hockey game. And he's the kind of player that makes something happen out of nothing. And we all love to see that out of players on the Montreal Canadiens, right? And when you see a young player putting up the offense in the KHL like he has, you start to really pay attention. Because that's not fake production, right? He's playing in a professional league. Even if it is the MHL and it's a little bit lower, it's girl man hockey still. And the kid found a way to make it matter. That's why his upside jumps off the page for me. I see a player in him that can attack space and make defenders really uncomfortable. And let's be honest here. Organizations don't get better by drafting safe little pieces forever, right? Sometimes you need to take a swing on a player who's doing something special. And that's exactly what the Canadiens did when they drafted Alexander Zborowski. You have to ask questions, though, like we did for Xhekaj, like we do for TJ Hughes. Can he handle it when the game gets a little bit heavier, when the pace gets tighter? Can he handle having less room, less time on the ice? Yeah, and with his skill, you can't dismiss that. You can develop it, and you know that he's got the skill available to do it. So, for me, Zborowski, definitely developing in the right direction. He's still got some time on his contract in the KHL, but overall, I mean, his development has gone beautifully, and I want to see it continue. And for those of you out there who want to see him next year, calm down. He's still young. There's time. I mean, we have a lot of guys on the roster that have earned their spots. We need to see what we've got before we start to move forward. Then there's Bryce Pickford. Here's a guy who didn't just politely enter the conversation. He ripped the door off the hinges. When a defenseman puts up the type of numbers that Pickford did this year with the Medicine Hat Tigers, you don't just shrug that off, right? You don't just say, oh, well, let's wait and see. You stop. You look. Because he's a right shot defenseman with offense, and you know those guys always matter. And if you take a look at the Montreal Canadiens, we know that we've got a hole on the right side. And Pickford's explosive offense put him on that map in a big way. I mean, let's be honest here, right? Junior hockey lets you get away with a lot of things the NHL never will, right? So the question for Pickford isn't whether he can create, because we know he can. The question is whether the rest of his game can round out enough for the projection to really hold. Can he defend under pressure? Can he make plays faster? Can he retrieve pucks cleanly? Can he play hard minutes? Can he survive the game when it's meaner? I mean, all those things matter, right, when you're talking about a young kid like Pickford. But there's no question that in terms of development, depending on what he does when he hits the American Hockey League next year, he might be right there in terms of the development of a guy, let's say, like Reinbacher, who's a little bit more on the defensive side. Pickford can be that offensive catalyst. Hell, if he continues to play that way through the American Hockey League, he'll be right there with the likes of Laine Hutson in terms of creating offense at the NHL level. Then you take another look at another right-hand defenseman in Bogdan Konjushkov. He's not a flashy prospect. He's the guy who's very similar to a David Reinbacher. And he's got value because he, too, is a right-shot defenseman. The way he plays, he's not selling you glamour. He's selling you credibility, right? And sometimes that really matters, especially on a team as hungry for defending on the right side as the Montreal Canadiens. You're not going to see him constantly on highlight reels. You're not going to see him dominating clips on social media. What you're going to see is a guy who has utility. You're going to see projection, and you're going to see a player who can realistically come over and make something happen that's useful for the Montreal Canadiens. The question with Konjushkov is whether he's got enough pace, enough bite, enough North American translation to take the pro foundation and turn him into an NHL player. That's the true piece of this all, right, when it comes to Konjushkov. Does he have it? It remains to be seen. It's easy to play defensive hockey at the lower levels, but we'll see whether when he hits pro, whether or not he can continue on that pace. Then, of course, is our favorite American, LJ Mooney, right? You can't say enough about this kid. You don't ignore players with the kind of offensive intelligence that he has just because he's not built like everybody else, because he's a smaller player. You develop him, you challenge him, you test him. I see LJ Mooney as the next Brendan Gallagher of the Montreal Canadiens, because sometimes a player who looks risky ends up changing your skill ceiling completely. And that's why he matters. He's not a safe prospect, he's a bet, right? And organizations, when they want to get more dangerous, they have to be willing to chase players with something a little different. The Canadiens did that a long time ago with Brendan Gallagher, because you never expect a small guy like Brendan Gallagher to be as dominant as he was in front of the net. He was. That's where I see Mooney, right? Can he keep forcing the issue? Can he keep producing? Can he keep showing that the skill that he's got is strong enough to beat the size conversation? Gallagher did it. We'll see whether or not Mooney does it. But again, he's developing very well. Now, I'm going to pivot the show here because the next two, I'm talking goaltenders, or the next three, I should say. I'm talking goaltenders. And so this is my strength, right, when it comes to goaltending. When you take a look at the three prospects the Canadiens have in their pool, all three of them look really good. It starts with Evgeny Volokhin, right? Because when you take a look at pure momentum when it comes to goaltending, his name pops. The numbers jump, and his profile jumps. Yeah, he's a goalie, which means everybody needs to calm down a little bit because goalie development is chaos. One good year doesn't really translate into being ready for the National Hockey League, right? Goalies make you believe, and then they completely disappear. So what does he have to do? Well, he has to make you believe that he's going to become an asset. He's going to have to teach you that he can shift and show you what matters. So the next question, of course, is whether or not he can keep climbing as the competition grows stronger, get faster reads, better reading ability, and see whether or not his margin for error becomes smaller. That's the question, because right now, if you're talking about goalies in the system with real upward momentum, Volokhin absolutely belongs in the top of that conversation. Then there's Quentin Miller. Quentin Miller deserves a little bit more respect after the season he just had, because at first glance, some people might still look at him and say, okay, goalie prospect, let's keep an eye on him. But you can't, right? A lot like what Jacob Fowler did, Quentin Miller showed that he could carry an entire NCAA program on his back. And that really matters a lot when you talk about a goaltender. It's not being sheltered during a little run or spot duty. He handled real pressure. Before his injury, I mean, he really established himself as a major part of Denver's season. Denver now is in the Final Four as well. And yes, his injury complicated things, but Johnny Hicks stepped in and changed the short-term picture. That part was real, and you can't ignore it, right? You don't miss the bigger point, though. Because before the injury, Miller had already proven that he belonged in the conversation in terms of the best goaltending prospects in the Canadiens organization. So the next part of his development is going to be the part that's fascinating. Does he respond? Does he reclaim ground? Does he keep building after the injury interruption? That's his story now. Quentin Miller is not just keep tracking him, right? He's not that type of goalie. He's a legitimate prospect in the system. And after this season, he's really earned that label. And then there's Alexis Cournoyer, a goalie that may have not gotten much exposure nationally, but he's had a serious year all in and of himself. He might be the quietest rise through this whole group, right? If there's one thing about goaltenders that really draws attention to them is that they keep building, they keep producing and winning, they keep forcing people to upgrade their opinion. That's a legitimate prospect, and that's exactly what Cournoyer is starting to feel like. He's got a steadiness to his game. He's not living on hype. He's just putting together real work, real results, and real recognition. And for goalies, that really matters. So when you take a can't even speak anymore. My throat's getting dry. When you take a step back and you take a look at all the prospects, when you're looking at Hughes, the possibility of getting Hughes, I should say, Xhekaj, LJ Mooney, Pickford, all of them. The picture is getting very, very clear for Montreal. Xhekaj feels like a very sure bet. And I forgot to say it before, but I think Montreal is going to sign him and bring him in for the last few games of the season. Zborowski has a very dangerous offensive upside, very similar to that of Demidov. Pickford, he's forced people to take him seriously because he's been that good on the offensive side. Konyushkov is an absolutely wicked defensive prospect. Mooney, he's the swing. He's the guy you're expecting to turn into Gallagher, but given his skill, he may not be that guy. And then in goal, any one of the three, Bolduc, Miller, and Cournoyer, are giving Montreal something to really think about. And that's what makes this group so interesting, right? And now I'm going to ask you, which one of these 8 prospects outside of Hughes and Xhekaj are you highest on? Right? Which one do you think is being a little bit underrated? And which one do you think is the best chance of becoming an impact player with the Canadiens sooner rather than later? That didn't go quite the way I wanted it to, but it is what it is. Now it's time for us to get to the best part of the show, and that is going to the live chat. As we come in here, Devious Luke, good evening, Coach. Habs fans everywhere. How about the game last night, that gritty, bloody hockey I grew up with? And Anderson was a lightning rod and grounded TV's power. Go Habs, go. Luke, you're not wrong. And here's a really fun part of this that you guys may not know, but I'll repeat here anyway. One of my best friends, and is a former first-round pick in the National Hockey League by the Buffalo Sabres, and that's Sean Anderson. I help run Sean's junior teams. I've known Sean for the better part of 25 years. And last night he called me, and he was talking to me about something going on with our team, and he said, "Are you watching this game? This so looks like the way I played back in the 80s, but when I played, it was a lot more brutal." And he's not wrong. But the actual hatred was there. You could see it was palatable. It wasn't quite Nordiques versus Canadiens on Good Friday, but it was what it was. Thank you for the question, Luke. Mr. Eric Live, they did what they had to do in these last 2 games. I think there's just a couple of minor things to adjust. And you're not wrong. There is, because we saw small little mistakes throughout the last couple of games, especially on the tying goal last night where Kucherov was left alone in the corner and everybody was focused on where the puck was on the far side. Granted, the net was empty. Tampa had an extra man, but still. Hat trick Cole. Duh, what game were you watching? Because I didn't see a hat trick. I saw 50 goals. No channel. Has to leave. But his statement for the night is they want to see something cool. Not dominant, but superstar worthy. Great play, hat trick, etc. I don't know why, no reason. I know we got to have. And that's why I got the hat trick. Now I get it. But yeah, it'd be nice to get a hat trick from Cole Caufield. But you know what? Let's temper up expectations a little bit. The guy's been through enough pressure trying to score 50 goals. Habs can beat any team over a 7-game series, says Jeff and NG. But they can also be beat. Jeff, that applies to every team in the NHL. It's true. It's a valid statement, but it's the truth either way. 1 versus 8 can lose. And so I'm not surprised at the statement. A win for the Montreal Canadiens, but this can be a 1-point difference and a rough one with some bang. It can be. The Columbus game? Oh, no doubt it can get that way because Columbus is desperate for points. Eric, talking about Michael Hage. Just give the kid a feel for the NHL and they could send him back to Laval if he's not fully ready. Very true. They can do that, but they're not going to do it this year. They'll do it next year. But I don't think Hage isn't ready. The way he's played in Michigan, the way he played at the World Juniors, outside of his face-off skill, I'm convinced he's got what he needs to be able to have success at the NHL level. In the playoffs, might be a little bit of dirty pool there, throwing him in there. I wouldn't put him on the second line. I might put him in as the third-line center, possibly. But nonetheless, he could provide something to the Montreal Canadiens that they're sorely missing. Katie win. Caufield gets 50, Slav gets 30. Do not worry. They'll be tempted to try and force the last few points to get Suzuki 100. Or have they gotten that out of their system? I don't think they have to force anything when they come to Suzuki, Katie, because he's involved so much in games. I don't foresee him not being able to get 2 points in the next couple of games. He's a point-per-game player. That goes without saying. So even if he gets 1 tomorrow and he gets 1 on Tuesday, it doesn't matter. He's still going to get to 100 points. Would I like to see him do it in 1 game? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean he has to. The hatred. Look at me. I said it properly. I don't think the Canadiens should start experimenting so much on the line with so much on the line. Give Hage some time. Surely he has a spot next season. Be patient. And that's a good way to look at it too. I mean, I'm not going to criticize anybody for looking at it either way. Some people are excited to have him here because they want another talent on the team. I get that. Some people want to see him, develop a little bit more. Maybe not at the NHL level, but maybe at the American Hockey League level. That's where he should be. We'll see. Obviously, the Canadiens are going to have that decision to make come next season. But in the here and now, he's going to be one of those late season call-ups that the Canadiens hold on to. Just remember, there's no cap in the playoffs, right? Or there is, but it only applies to the 20 players that are on your roster. So for any given game. So, there's that. So we'll see what happens. Jeff, Suzuki can easily get good 2 points. I agree. Joe Luna, Habs are going to win the cup. Habs versus Colorado. Joe, hit the brakes. Okay? Please. I know how much you want to win a cup. I get it. But you can't be that overconfident. Right? The Canadiens are still not at the top of the game. The Avalanche are playing a hell of a lot better hockey. Can they get there? Absolutely. Do I want them to win? I do. But temper your expectations. Don't start saying that we aren't the Toronto Maple Leafs fans here, where we say, oh, yeah, let's plan the parade down St. Catherine Street. Stop. This rebuild has been created and built on patience. You're not going to jump the gun here just because the Canadiens are playing well. If they win it, great, but temper the expectations. Okay? Let them win a round. The next step, let them win another round. If they do, great. If they get out of the first round, they'll be in great shape one way or the other. Okay? To make it to the conference final. And if they make it to the conference final and the Metropolitan, the way they're weak, I wouldn't be surprised if they make it to the Stanley Cup final. But the Atlantic is so difficult, that's going to be the real test for them. And so if they don't blow their load in the first couple of rounds, the Canadiens are going to be in great shape. And Rabinov. Hage to Laval because he's not ready. Habs win the cup. I wouldn't be surprised, although it'll come next year, and the ones that follow, I'll be confident, not unsurprised. And that's the way I'm thinking, Luke. Honestly, it's and it's not to dismiss anything that Joe's saying here. Do I want this team to win a cup? You know I do. I mean, I don't think there's a Habs fan on the planet that doesn't. But again, expectations need to be tempered. Can they do it? Yes. But come next year, the expectations are going to be a little bit higher. And that's what I'm getting at. Don't expect it now, but expect them to start pushing for that cup next year, 1,000%. Mr. Eric Live, yeah, I mentioned him during the show, TJ Hughes. There's other teams out there looking to get him as well, including Toronto and Edmonton. The good thing about it is, number one, Hage is coming to Montreal for sure. And number two, and most importantly, TJ Hughes grew up a Canadiens fan. So a couple of feathers in our cap, plus the way this rebuild is going, why wouldn't you want to play for Montreal? Montreal MUFC. On the flip side, could leaving him in college risk exposing him to the other hazards that could derail his path? Danny Crystal wasted his own potential because of unhealthy life choices in college. That's a great point, MUFC, but let me put it to you this way, okay? I actually know Michael Hage's family. His Uncle Ray is a friend of mine. I can tell you, knowing the family and the way they are, there's no way Hage is going to be left to his own devices the same way Danny Crystal was, right? There's no two ways about that. Given the importance, too, of his father's dream, he's not going to do it. Michael's a character kid. He's not Danny Crystal, and that's the big difference here. The hatred. Habs will win the cup this year. I don't believe that. And fans expecting a cup, this year will be the first to complain and demand to fire the coach and the GM and trade the player if the Canadiens don't win. Yeah? Tell me something we didn't already know. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to say this again. I will not expect them to win. But can they? Yes. They have the talent to do it. Does it remain intact? Do they avoid injury? Do the guys stay as energized as they are right now? That's the question. The Canadiens haven't gone past the first round, right? You need to win 16 games to win the cup and go through 4 different rounds. And as I mentioned, the Atlantic, no matter who you play, is going to be difficult to get out of. So you may very well play, if they win the division, they may very well end up playing somebody from the Metro, which, would be best case scenario for the Habs. But if they don't win the division and they end up playing 2 versus 3, it's Tampa. And so if they can win that battle, well, then they may have another one against another Atlantic Division team. All that being said, it's going to be a tough race to get to the Stanley Cup final. But if they do get out of the Atlantic and they win the first 2 rounds, I can guarantee you that I'll be pushing and hoping that the Canadiens do win. But coming out of the Atlantic is going to be the key. Luke, I don't expect it. Just wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking. The talent's definitely there. Let's see. Dick Labette. It's a good thing I know it French. Oh boy. Hi, Richard. Since all teams now use the slingshot for the power play, why not to put two forwards together on the blue line next to each other that move apart when the slingshot player comes up from behind? Put them on the same side of the ice, you mean? Put on the blue line next to each other, then move apart when the slingshot or the player comes down the ice. Okay. Here's where I'm going to do something different. Okay? Watch this. Take a look at the diagram behind me, guys. And if you can't see it, well, I guess you can't. Hang on. Let me see if you can see this. Nope, I don't have the camera on. Never mind. There you go. But basically what I put back here, guys, is very simple. The minute you put two guys on the top side of the slingshot, right? They're stagnant. They can't move. They're tight. And they only need one defenseman to cover both, right? When you spread them apart, it's a different story. In my mind, okay, when it comes to the slingshot, what you should do is, hang on a second while I tighten this up because I moved it like an idiot. Stay. The way I look at the slingshot, as opposed to what you're suggesting, Dick, is instead of having one guy come up the ice, why not have two? Right? That's my thinking. Right? Let's say, for example, you've got Suzuki and Caufield coming up the ice, or Suzuki and Demidov coming up the ice at the exact same time in the slingshot, right? What you can do is you can have Suzuki go to the right, or you can have him cut across and have Demidov cut to the left, creating a draw pass at the blue line. That's a possibility to break up the defense. You also can overload one side at that point. But what you should have, okay, is you should have the two forwards that are at the blue line. The minute the puck is dropped back, you should have them swing through the neutral zone. So that this way, when they come across the line, all three forwards are coming across the line with speed. That's the part that the Canadiens lack. Because what happens is oftentimes you catch forwards flat-footed at the line, and that's what creates the offsides. That's what creates the problems in getting the puck deep into the zone. So that's where I'm getting at in terms of I'd love to see them, because they did it early in the season. They had two guys in the slingshot. It worked. Why they went back to one? I can't really answer that. Should they vary it? Sure. They can have one in the slingshot. They can have two. Why not? But at the end of the day, all you need to do is make sure that whatever side your forward goes to with the puck, you have to have pressure on the opposite side in case he needs to rim the puck around. And you need to make sure he has support along the boards like he normally does to be able to make a short pass and gain entry into the zone. That's the important part of the slingshot. The speed coming out, I freaking hate it, by the way. But it can be useful if used correctly. Oftentimes it's not. That's where I get pissed. But a great question, Dick. Thank you for it. Let's see here. Paul, I really enjoyed the game last night. I love the way we played TB and the way we are going to have to play them in a long playoff series. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a long playoff series if they play that way, to be honest with you. I honestly think that if Tampa gets into a little bit of a physical game with the Canadiens, they may end up on the wrong side of it. That said, when they add Hedman back, and they will, they're going to look like a different hockey team. Sean Somerville calling me Mr. Papoulias. That was my dad, but thank you. Do you think Suzuki-Caufield duel can maintain this scoring pace in the playoffs, or will teams shut them down? That's a great point. That's a great question. The answer to that is twofold, okay? Because some of that has to do with the players themselves in terms of the pressure that they have against themselves and whether or not they have the skill to get away from defenders in the playoffs. The answer to that is absolutely they've got the skill. But the other part of that is, how is the matchup going to end up? Because if we know anything about Marty St. Louis, he's not too much into line matching. Like, he won't take his third line and match it up against the first. He likes to roll his lines, and he likes to keep them there. And oftentimes you see him get caught with his pants down when somebody like John Cooper will throw out another line just to change things up. And then he's playing catch-up. That's the game that Cooper's going to play. That's where this duo can really get hurt. Not in the sense that they can't do it. In the sense that they won't be able to build the rhythm for it because of the fact that John Cooper is going to create so much confusion on the Canadiens bench. It's going to be an interesting matchup, to say the least. Not just on the ice, but cerebral in terms of the coaching on both sides. And you know me, that's what I'm looking at, right? All the time. Oh, there's no doubt that the hatred for Tampa is sown, especially when it comes to Kucherov. One thing we have to improve, this comes from Paul again, is on the power play. We're going to make some noise in the playoffs. And that's extremely true. Especially against a team like Tampa, who plays a very strong and physical and pressure-packed penalty kill. So they need to get better. They need to have different looks. That's for sure. Dan C. I don't believe I've seen you before. Welcome to the show. If that's the case, if the Habs make it to the second round, I will be proud. Finals, ecstatic. Next year, absolutely. All young players growing and maturing. And that is exactly the way I look at it, Dan. So thank you for that comment. Katie, you're in the middle. I think if H could work out, then fine. Sign him. I don't want to be unfair and put him through an unnecessary trial by fire too soon. And that's exactly my point. Do I know he can handle the pressure? If you watch the World Juniors, the answer to that is yes. But the NHL pressure, that's a little different. So we'll see how that turns out. Paul, Coach, if we end up playing Tampa in the first round and it's a long series, I'm not sure whether whoever ends up winning will have much for the second round. Absolutely. I mean, that goes without saying, right? And that's the part that worries me. If there's one thing I know for sure, the Canadiens know all too well that they cannot play a long series versus Tampa or anybody coming out of the Atlantic, whether it's the Sabres, doesn't matter. Those type of teams play hard, physical games, and they have skill that can bury you. The Canadiens, they've proven they can defend that skill, but strategy in the playoffs, when you're playing 7 games in a row, is a hell of a lot different than when you're playing somebody 9 days later or a couple months later. So, and that's the part that's going to be really tricky. Dan, goaltending will be decisive in how far we go. Winning the cup this year may derail our long-term goals. Players could move on. You know what? I'm not worried about our goaltending now, Dan, to be honest. And I don't think a lot of people are. Given the performance of both Jacob Fowler and Jakub Dobes, especially Dobes, who continues to get his rookie numbers up and up and up, I'm certain the Canadiens can make some noise in the playoffs so long as the goaltending holds. Hatred. I agree with the possibility, but a possibility is very far from reality. We have the toughest division this year. Tampa Bay, Buffalo, and moving to the other conference, we have Carolina. You're not wrong about Carolina, but there's one thing about Carolina that is abundantly true, and that is Carolina has a hard time sustaining their pace through multiple rounds. We saw it last year. We saw it the year before. They start out great. They have the energy. They take the pounding. They work, but they don't really have, outside of Aho and Svechnikov, they don't really have breakout offense to be able to sustain what that team can do from a physical perspective and to be able to be competitive for long periods of time. But again, can they win the cup? Yes. Can they be a difficult out in the conference finals? Yes. Will they get there? Possibly. But the minute you get into the playoffs, it's a different season. Everything's up in the air. What you did over the regular season means nothing. It's a different dance. And you got to learn to do the two-step in the playoffs. Sean McIntyre. You're saying the Habs can win their bottom 6 is enough. I love them, but be real. Maybe I'm wrong, but 3 years from now, you will see the team, and then you will know. Sean, I'm not disagreeing with you, man. I'm not at all. Like I'm in complete agreement with you. There are other people that are saying that the Canadiens should win the cup now, and I don't believe they should win the cup now. They can, but I don't want to put that expectation on them. Right? They've done great things this year. Right? They've come back from a putrid start by their goaltending, problems defensively in the man-to-man or the hybrid or whatever you want to call it. All kinds of different things, injuries, you name it. And they've managed to get where they are. That's no small feat. But to say this team is ready right here and now to win a cup because they're good enough from top to bottom is a bit of a stretch. But like I said with anything, if you're number 1 or you're number 16, the day the puck drops on the Stanley Cup playoffs, you have a chance to win the Stanley Cup. It's as simple as that. Hatred. I expect Montreal to go to the second round this year, and after that, we'll see. In the end, hope level equals disappointment level. And that's very true. If you're too hopeful and you don't manage expectations, like you're saying, you do get disappointed a little bit more quickly. That's why I'm trying to keep this tepid, right? And I'm not trying to, yeah, they can win it. I'm not looking for clickbait, okay? What I'm looking for is logic. Logically, this team has flaws. They need defense on the right side. They need another center. We know it. But is the possibility there is the question? And the answer to that is always yes. Dick. I asked a question about the slingshot because Tampa was particularly effective in blocking the power play last night. That wasn't all about the slingshot, but you're right about that because they stack 4 across the blue line when you're coming in. They don't care how far you're coming from or how fast you're coming. They stack 4 because they know somebody's got to stay back. So it's going to be a 4-on-4 for them. You're really taking away your own man advantage, for lack of a better way of putting it, because of the fact that you've got to keep somebody behind the guy who's coming in on the slingshot. Because say for example Suzuki comes in on the slingshot, loses the puck at the blue line, goes the other way. If you don't have somebody behind him afterwards, like a Hutson or a Demidov or even a Slafkovsky, then you're in deep trouble. You're allowing for a breakaway to happen while you're shorthanded. And that's what the Canadiens are trying to avoid. But at the same token, they're becoming predictable, and teams like Tampa figure those things out. Eric, personally, I think that this was the perfect game, and this lack of finesse, if they continue like this, they won't go very far in the playoffs. Also, Tampa isn't the Tampa of the past. Totally agree they're not, but they're still a very dangerous team. Why? Because of the fact that they're coached by Jon Cooper. It doesn't matter what iteration you've had or what guys have been on defense. There's 3 things that have been constant with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Andrei Vasilevsky, Nikita Kucherov, and Jon Cooper. That goes without saying. Anytime you have those 3 guys on any team, you're going to have a good chance to win. Hedman on the defensive side is elite, bar none. We know what Nikita Kucherov can do. And Jon Cooper is the best coach, in my mind, in the NHL because of what he's been able to do and the consistency he's been able to bring to the table despite injury, despite players leaving, coming in, you name it. You're talking about a team that's lost Alex Killorn, Steven Stamkos since their last cup win. Yes, they got Yanni Gourde back, but who gives a rat's ass? But just saying, that's a lot of goals to lose. And they've still continued to be at the top of the division. That's no small feat, and you can't take it for granted. But I don't think the Canadiens have a lack of finesse because when you get into this end of the year tight checking bullshit, for lack of a better way of putting it, you tend to look like you have less finesse, but the finesse is still there. It just needs a little bit of room. Sean McIntyre, just wondering, it seems like you know more than the Habs staff, so why aren't you coaching them? I don't know more than the Habs staff. Thank you for the compliment, though. But honestly, you know, it's sometimes you see things from afar, and sometimes you see that you don't. Unlike the Montreal Canadiens, right? If I'm Marty St. Louis, and this is what he's done fantastically well this season, is delegate. You delegate one thing to Trevor Letowski. You delegate things to your video team. You delegate things to Stefan Robida. You delegate things to Adam Nicholas. You delegate things to others. And that way you move together as a team, and you're just there pulling the strings and letting them know where you want to go with things. That's what a head coach is supposed to do at this level or any level. That being said, right, St. Louis is going to take it in the chin when something goes wrong, because that he was like that as a player. He's like that as a coach. But one thing's for certain. When it comes to video, a lot of times you're at the mercy of your video coach. You could tell them what you want to see, but sometimes they won't see it. I see what I see, and I tell you what I see, right? And I try to say it in a way that you guys can visualize it and understand it. And if you do, then great. If you don't, ask me. I'll try to clarify it for you. I have no problem with that. But sometimes when you're at ice level, okay, and I'm talking about from experience, when you're at ice level and you're behind the bench and you're watching the game, sometimes you don't really see everything that's going on because you've got somebody standing in front of you, because, you know, there's more than one player on the ice that's blocking your vision. And that's why you see Marty St. Louis pick up the iPad and look. And he goes and he tags something and he tells the video coach, I want to see this later. And there's a time delay. It's not right there on the spot. That's the type of thing that we all need to take a step back and understand. Back in the day, Roger Nielsen implemented video, right? He was the first to use film. It wasn't even on cassette. There was somebody there with an old film camera and rolling film on 2 reels. And if there's one thing that was for certain with Nielsen, he found a way to be able to do that from behind the bench, but not everybody else can, right? The technology's there, but sometimes coaches, they could see what's going on right then and there, but they have a better perspective of the game when they watch it afterwards. And that's what we do, right? I watch the game and then I watch replays and I build my perspective. That's what coaches do too. And that's the part that makes what they do so dangerous and difficult. And, you know, when you don't get the results, you take a punch in the face as the head coach of the Montreal Canadiens. If things go well, oh, well, he's doing his job. There's no glory in coaching, my friends. Just remember that. What's the status on Kirby Dach? Do you think our team will be weaker without him? You know, I saw a comment the other day about Kirby Dach. And honestly, it kind of bothered me a little bit because what happened to Dach this year had nothing to do with his knees. It had to do with a little bit of bad luck and breaking his foot and whatever. And he came back after his injury now recently, and he's looked good out there. He hasn't looked out of place. He's helped create. It's not like he's, he looks like he shouldn't be playing at all. And he wasn't a liability on the ice. He was tough along the boards. He got into scrums. Everything you would expect from Kirby Dach. No, he's not producing. He's playing on a third fucking line. He's not going to produce at this point, right? Unless things change. That being said, I have no issue with Kirby Dach's game. Are we better with him in the lineup? Depends on the lineup, right? Honestly, and I don't know if I mentioned this before on the show, but what I want to see from the Canadiens in the playoffs at a certain point would be for them to drop Slafkovsky back down with Oliver Kapanen and Demidov and throw Dach back up with Caufield and Suzuki, because that trio had success and so did the second trio. That would bring strength to both lines. Now, if you throw in Michael Hage as the third line center, everything changes that dynamic afterwards and the team becomes even deeper. See where I'm going with this? I want to see equality on the top 2 lines. I want each line to look just as dangerous as the other. In order to do that, You make a small little tweak, and I think you'll be able to move forward. Luke, they've already gave me a season to be happy with. No one should be disappointed regardless of how it plays out from here. Yeah, you could say that, but I'll be happy if they could win a round because that would show real progress, Luke. And it's important progress when it comes to the confidence and the ability to rebuild in this team. If you go back and you take a look at the Edmonton Oilers over the past couple of seasons, for example, one year they got to Game 7. The next year they didn't. And now they're starting to digress even more. So really being able to get past that hump to the next level is just as important as getting there in terms of the development of these young kids. So I think it's important. Dan, why do we struggle on the power play? You know this section of the middle of the ice? I'm going to point to it right here. Oops, wrong side. Right over here. That section right here in the offensive zone. That area is where the bumper lives. You know what the problem is? We don't have anybody in the bumper. Okay? On our power play, we normally have Hutson up top. On the flanks, we've got Demidov and Caufield, Suzuki. And by the goal line, we've got Slafkovsky and we've got Caufield. Okay? So what happens? There's nobody in the middle. Normally, you see Slafkovsky come out from below the goal line and sneak into the bumper. It should be there much more effectively. The Canadiens aren't running a clean 1-3-1 power play. And I don't want anybody to get that impression. They're using what they call an umbrella, where they've got 3 up top. It should be 1 in the slot, 1 at the bottom, or 2 at the bottom. You can run your umbrella that way as well. That's what the Canadiens are doing. But they're trying to use a variance between the two to create some confusion on the defensive side. Because with the umbrella, you defend with the box. With the 1-3-1, you defend in a diamond. And you leave the bumper, you try to cover the passing lane so the bumper can't get the puck, effectively eliminating him. That's the difference. And that's why the power play hasn't been effective, because the guys are using both and they're not finding seams to be able to make those clean passes that they were earlier in the season. Katie, for the playoffs, I just want to get to round 2. Anything after that's a bonus. My real wish would be for things to align so we could have a series against Boston, but I'll take getting to the second round. Oh my God, wouldn't I love that? Boston gets out of the first round, Canadiens get out of the first round, and we meet them in the second round. The problem with that, though, is that if the Canadiens come out of the first round and so do the Sabres, then, of course, the Sabres would face Boston because Boston is a wild card team. And they'd be... Actually, no, the Sabres would face Boston. Huh. Yeah, it might happen in the second round. Good call on that one, Katie. I'd love to see that. I miss it, actually. Can we get Arber to keep blasting slappers? Sooner or later, people are going to get out of the way. Hell, the goalie may move. You know what the fun part about that is? He hasn't hit the net with it all that often. So the logic's sound if he's not missing the net like Gaston Gingras back in the 80s. JP, what's up, gang? What a wild game last night. That was a playoff hockey game. That was real playoff hockey, excuse me. Amazing experience. Watching at a local pub. Playoffs is going to be freaking intense. You want to give a local pub? Where are you, JP? You're in Montreal, so downtown? Because I'm in Montreal too. Well, I'm in Saint Lazare, which is a suburb of Montreal. But anyway, which pub? Give them a plug. You know what the funniest part about yesterday, where you're saying this, agreed, like Nick said at the start, it should be fun. He also said something else, which I mentioned in the postgame yesterday, and we haven't mentioned here at all, is that Nick said when he was getting interviewed by John Still, right? John Still asked him, what do we get first, Cole's 50th or Slav's 30th? And Suzuki, like a real captain does, answered, why not both? There you have it. Mr. Eric, what I'm trying to say is regarding finesse and precision, is that there's still far too much confusion. The puck needs to land on a teammate's stick and not blindly. If you're talking about the power play, I don't think it's blindly, Eric, when it comes to finesse. You're not talking about the power play. You're talking about the game in general. Here's the fun part. When it comes to the power play, okay, or any play for that matter, when it comes to finesse, when you're playing finesse hockey, you need to play with speed. You can't slow it down, and that's where the variance is, right? When you watch these guys go up the ice, sometimes you watch guys come up with speed, and another time you watch them come up really slow, and they're on the same line. And that's where the variance is. And that's why I say, like, when I was talking about the power play earlier, when I said I'd like to see both wingers swinging so that they can match the speed of the player coming into the zone. Not necessarily so they can keep up, but so that they enter the zone with the same pace and force the defense to back off. Those are the things that really change things up. And the other part is not every player skates at the same pace. So when you're making passes out of your own zone, sometimes you anticipated being a little bit further away, but instead it should be closer and the player misses the puck and goes down the ice for icing. How many times have we seen that from the Canadiens this year? And so that's the part that they need to learn, and they are. They're not as bad as we might think when it comes to the finesse side of the game. When they have possession in the zone and they're only moving around the zone, watch, because they move the puck as good as any team in the National Hockey League. It's in transition they need to be a little bit more crisp. Joe the Snoop. Hi all from sunny Sydney, Australia. I don't care who we face in the first round. All that matters is that the Habs play well enough to go into the second round. That's my point. That's what I want to see. And Joe, I'm gonna tell you one thing. I had done, what was it? It wasn't Cutler. Oh, what was his name again? Oh, I'm killing myself. Luke Worthington, that's the name. I had done an intro for Luke Worthington, who's from Australia, way back in the day, because he was covering the AHL down there, which is the Australian Hockey League, or the AIHL, I think they call it. And so I'm all too familiar with Australia. I also had an elementary school teacher for 2 years, not because I failed, because she went from 5 and 6, who was from Melbourne. So I know a lot about Australia, more than most people should. And after all these years, it's still up here, which is really weird. Shane, even if the Habs lose in the first this year, but it goes 7 games, it's the bottom 6, other than Anderson, that will be gone soon, and bigger and more talented players would be there, and that is what it is. And listen, Shane, I get what you meant. I'm not debating that, right? If there's a part of this team that is weak, it's the bottom 6. But take a look at your bottom 6 for a minute and think about it. You've got Anderson, you've got Evans, you've got Brendan Gallagher. Despite the fact that Brendan Gallagher has had a worse than normal season, when he shows up in the playoffs, you're going to see a different Brendan Gallagher, right? That's the important thing that people forget. He's going to come. He's a warrior. He's going to come to work, right? Lunch pail in hand. Let's go. When you take a look further down and you look at your fourth line, that's when you're looking at a Joe Veleno. You're looking at, I haven't even mentioned Alex Tessier, who was playing with that line with Anderson. You've got Tessier. You've got Veleno. There's a different smattering of players that you could throw in there to make those lines effective. They don't have to be great. They can provide some second-tier scoring, but they don't have to be great. But the one thing they do have to be is dependable defensively. That's going to be uber important when it comes to this playoff round. So we'll see how that works out. Yves Thibault, St. Lazare, me too. Attaboy, from the hood. You might see me hanging around the Quartier des Sports Kubota. I'm a member of the gym there. Not that I've gone yet, but I just got my membership today. Shane McIntyre. It all comes down to the players in the lineup, and there are some studs and trades to be had after next year. They're weeding them out. Not to worry. Again, no problem there. Arber reminded me of Happy Gilmore. Very hard shot, but he'll end up killing a fan behind the net 75% of the time. When I saw, there was a picture that was going around the internet of the Hanson brothers. And it was Arber Xhekaj, Josh Anderson, and I forget who the other one was. But it reminded me of the part in Slapshot where one of the Hanson brothers stops to take a slap shot and he hits the organ player in the head. It makes me think of Fulton Reed from the Mighty Ducks. Yes, absolutely. All grown up. Yeah. And as we come across 9:30, the last word of the show is going to come to Shane McIntyre, because you can hear me. I'm losing my voice. It all comes down to the players in the lineup, and there are some. Oh, we already said that one. There you go. It was Struble. Thank you, MUFC. And so I guess that'll be the last word on the show tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed talking to you guys. Again, talk to me about the prospects. Talk to me about what you think they should do with Hage. Talk to me about how aggressive you want them to be with TJ Hughes. Put it in the comments if you're watching this show recorded. Love you all. Thanks for doing this. And we'll speak tomorrow after the Canadiens face off against the Blue Jackets. And remember,